The family of 13-year-old Enoch Mpianzi has accepted an offer of legal assistance from the Human Rights Commission. Enoch drowned last week while on a Parktown Boys High orientation camp in the Northwest Province. An investigation into the incident is being conducted by the Gauteng Education Department. For more on the legal aspects of the case, we're joined now by attorney Mbuleli Kolisi. Very good evening to you, and thank you very much for speaking to us.
Good evening. Good evening to you, SABC.
Let's talk about the legal implications on this. I mean, much has been made about the fact that the parents have signed an indemnity form when releasing Enoch for the school camp. What exactly does that mean practically?
Well, one has to understand the operation of an indemnity form or contract in its proper context. In this particular instance is that if you are dealing with learners, this is a regulated environment in terms of the South African Schools Act, and whether you're a public school like it is in this particular case, I understand that Parktown Boys High is a public school as defined in the Schools Act, South African Schools Act rather. So now one has to understand that there might be two areas that we need to focus on here. It might well be that was an enrollment contract, which is for purpose of enrolling the learner at the school. Then there might have been, and now we're speculating because this is a developing story, there may have been now a specific indemnity form that would have been signed in respect of this particular excursion that was taken.
So what would be the distinction between the two? What is the importance of this? Because the enrollment form, I'd imagine that's generally for activities through the academic year or the environment that the pupil then goes to school in, etc., etc. But this one would be for a particular incident or number of days?
Well, I must again caution here that we are assuming in this instance because we're not aware whether there was a separate indemnity form that was signed. But in terms of the developing story, it would seem to me that there had been a request for life jackets to be provided. So it might well be that there was a specific indemnity form. It would not probably be no part of the normal indemnity clause that will be included.
Okay, so
in
let's
the contract
talk about this, because according to the reports, the parents were asked to sign a letter which informed them that their child is going on a school camp. So the importance of that's what I'm trying to understand. It's a release form in which parents acknowledge that their child is going to be away from home. Most of us have had to give that to our parents. Parents have received that as well. So what is a function of such a form? And just how much does it bind you? Well,
it has its own limitations, and obviously it operates within the parameters of the law. In this particular instance, one would be guided by the principles that govern the law of delict, which is part of the settled law in this country. There's plenty of case law that regulates the issue of indemnities and when would a school or a school governing body, be responsible. By and large, the standard that is used is that of negligence or intention. In this particular case, I would imagine it would be the question as to whether the teachers in whose care and control the learners were within at the time of the incident, whether they had discharged their duty of care in ensuring the safety of the children.
So when you sign this form, just how binding is it to you as a person who signs it if you're not given the minutiae, the details of what and when exactly? Are you still held to it? Because if indeed you were informed that life jackets would be required, but if you're not given the minutiae in terms of the details of what the life jacket is for and where they're going to be used, in what manner?
In this instance, one would imagine, one is talking about the makeshift rafts that we made. Surely there was going to be water involved. And it would, from the news or from the developing story, it would seem that this was a crocodile river, which is quite big.
Exactly.
So surely this was that was a risky expedition on its own. One should have foreseen that there would be a likelihood of a learner drowning. And the question would be, what was the arrangement in terms of the coordination of this whole process, in terms of the teachers, if the teachers were involved, to what extent did they supervise, and one cannot unreasonably expect one to go beyond what normal precautions would be taken.
And I want to talk
now
about
we need to get to the nitty-gritties, because at this stage we're not exactly aware in terms of what exactly transpired during this process.
While we're not, I want to know if you talk about the establishment, if you offer certain activities that carry with it risk, and so on whom does the onus lie in terms of your safety? If you offer an activity that carries with it risk, on whom does it lie? Between the person who partakes in the activity or the person that offers the activity, to ensure that ultimately one is safe and that no undue, risk is carried?
I would imagine that the establishment that offers or that controls the facilities would have had an agreement with the school. And one would have to look as to what was the arrangement, what were they supposed to provide in terms of the agreement, which is a private arrangement altogether. However, should it be established, because this is a public, this may have an element of a public liability component, but there will also be elements that will be regulated by the South African Schools Act in terms of the responsibility that is within the teachers, that is placed within the teachers, and that is also dependent on the degree of negligence, if any, if it has been established, when later on a report probably then is delivered once the matter has been investigated.
Very briefly, yes or no answer, will this result in greater scrutiny in school activities?
This will certainly lead to that, but one must also note that these incidents are not rare in South Africa.
All right. Thank you very much for your time and sharing with us your insights. Attorney Mbuleli Kolisi.